In the last video, we just finished D. I cannot figure out the settings on this camera, and it is recording too giant of files, so I can only post 10 minutes at a time. So I apologize for that. We just finished D, and then I went and wrote all these letters, but the file is too big, so we're starting back at E. And we still haven't done A, so don't worry about it. We'll get there. So we did the D, and now the E will be the same as the C, which is related to the O. So start just below the X height and bulge. Ooh, and bulge. Bulge and bulge and stop when you get to the thin. Then come up and like the C, come up and bulge and then pull horizontal across. Stop when your right part of your nib is directly above the thin part of that first stroke. Then, with a flat pen angle above the midpoint, pull it out when your nib comes to that imaginary line. You can do a slight twist down with your left side of the nib to add some weight there to that crossbar. Another E you could do is the same beginning. Let's see. Same beginning. Stop when you get to the thin. Come up and bulge. And then you're going to push in and flatten and come out. That is historic. Be careful when you pull this out. You don't want to add too much flourish here unless you know what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to look amateur. After the E is an F. The F is a descender. Remember that we're only going to go a pen width below, no more than 2 pen widths below the baseline. Then we want that same shape we've created in the B and the Roman D, and this stroke is the same stroke that we did for this E and the C, where we start in the where the O tells us to start. We come up and then pull across. Then you want this counter space here to be big. So you're going to, with a flat pen angle, pull this crossbar down here and rotate down. With the bird's beak serif, it will look like this. 30-degree angle, pierce, exhale down, and then just the left part of the nib, nice and round. And that same counter space. And notice how it's not going all the way to the edge, just like the C and the E aren't going all the way to the square. And if you are feeling fancy and you trust your readers, you could cross even lower, and that adds a lot of character to your Uncial alphabet. It does get hard to read, so be careful how low you cross that, but you will see very low crossbars on your F. Okay. G. It starts out as a C. Start below, come out and bulge, and thin. Stop when you get to the thin. That, I'm just going to leave it. Then I'm going to come up here, bulge and stop when these are on top of each other right there. Then in the center of this square, I'm going to put my left nib corner. I'm going to come up and around and fill that space of the mother O and then meet at the thin there. You can see how this will read as a 6 if it's in a line with letters and numbers. So be aware of that, but that is one option for a G. Another option, same as the O, thin, come back up, horizontal. My nib is doing the work of creating this curve here. Then, with a 30-degree angle below the midpoint, I'm going to come and go down into the descender area. That is your second G. Another G that looks a little weak to me, so I don't use it, but it is an offering, is that same thing, and then you start right here and go straight down into the descender area. Okay. H. We have two options for H's. We have the Roman H, which will be slightly narrower than our full square. With the crossbar above the middle. I don't know what my ink is doing. Okay. And you can do the bird's beak serif on that first stroke of the H. I would leave any exit stroke off of this because you want to keep this counter space open. For the Uncial H, I'll do it with the bird's beak. You have an ascender, pierce on the left-hand side of my nib to make that serif. Then the same branch as the B and the D, where I come up and bulge, and then I'm going to think about Mother O. Ooh, that was dangerous. I'm going to think about Mother O right now, and then I'm just going to come down and pierce. So if I was doing the second O stroke, I would end up over here, and that will get hard to read. So think about O, and then when you get to that midpoint, just think about going down and gently piercing the baseline. The I, you have a couple options depending on what alphabet if you're doing serifs or entrance stroke. There's your serif or your entrance stroke and exit stroke. J didn't exist as a letter at the time of Uncial. It came about by scribes decorating their Roman numeral I's. So they're writing a bunch of I's, and the last I they write is elongated into the descender area. And then they had this letter that they could apply a sound to. That's how we got J. So that's also why it's kind of hard to make in Roman letters as well, because it didn't exist. It wasn't designed there. If you do this entrance stroke here on the J, it gets a little shroopy. So with a flat pen angle, come in, come down, and then when you hit the baseline, just gently go to your left. Ideally, this would be a straight line instead of already heading that way. This one is a great example. This one is, I got a little too excited about making a J. Okay, come back for the rest of the alphabet.